The scar that ran from Beatrice Sullivan's left temple to her jawline told only part of the story. But it was the part everyone saw first when they looked at her on that dusty August morning in 1878 as she stepped off the train in Williamsburg, Virginia. Beatrice pressed a gloved hand to her leather traveling bag and surveyed the small railroad station with eyes that had learned to expect disappointment. At 22 years old, she had already buried a husband, survived a wagon accident that left her face permanently marked, and endured 3 years of whispered conversations that always seemed to end the moment she entered a room. The accident had done more than leave physical scars. It had damaged something inside her, something the doctors in Philadelphia said meant she would face complications if she ever tried to bear children. Her mother-in-law had been more direct about it during their final, brutal conversation. "You will never be a good mother, Beatrice," the older woman had said, her voice cold as December frost. "Even if by some miracle you conceived, you are too broken, too damaged. My son deserved better, and any child deserves better than what you could offer." Those words had burned deeper than any physical wound, and Beatrice carried them west with her like stones in her pockets. Williamsburg was meant to be a fresh start, a place where nobody knew about the accident or the diagnosis or the shame. Her late husband's younger sister had married a shopkeeper here and offered Beatrice work managing the accounts. It was charity wrapped in kindness, but Beatrice had swallowed her pride and accepted. The afternoon heat pressed against her dark traveling dress as she made her way down the wooden sidewalk toward the address she had been given. Williamsburg was smaller than she had imagined, a collection of weathered buildings clustered around a main street that looked like it was fighting a losing battle against the Virginia wilderness. She passed a saloon, a general store, a blacksmith's forge that sent sparks dancing into the bright air. She did not notice the man watching her from outside the livery stable until she nearly walked into his horse. "Whoa there," a deep voice said, and strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her before she could stumble backward. "Are you all right, miss?" Beatrice looked up into a face that seemed carved from the same sun-weathered wood as the buildings around them. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes so blue they seemed almost startling against his tanned skin. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, dusty leather chaps over worn denim, a faded shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. A hat hung down his back from a cord around his neck. "I am fine," Beatrice said, stepping back quickly and turning her scarred side away from him out of habit. "I apologize. I was not watching where I was going. No harm done." The cowboy's voice held a warm drawl that spoke of years spent under open skies. "You look a bit lost, if you do not mind me saying. Can I help you find something?" Beatrice hesitated, then pulled the crumpled letter from her bag and showed him the address. The cowboy studied it for a moment, then smiled. "Morrison's General Store. That is just 3 buildings down on the left side of the street." He pointed, then extended his hand. "Nathan Zimmerman. Most folks call me Nate." She shook his hand briefly, aware of the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. "Beatrice Sullivan. Welcome to Williamsburg, Miss Sullivan." Nathan's eyes held genuine warmth, and Beatrice realized with a small shock that he had looked directly at her scar without flinching, without that moment of poorly concealed revulsion she had grown accustomed to. "If you need anything while you are settling in, the Zimmerman Ranch is about 5 miles north of town. Anyone can give you directions." "Thank you," Beatrice said, uncertain how to respond to such casual kindness from a stranger. She hurried away before he could see the flush creeping up her neck. The general store was exactly where Nathan had indicated, a sturdy building with large windows displaying everything from farming equipment to bolts of fabric. A bell chimed as Beatrice pushed through the door, and a plump woman with kind eyes looked up from behind the counter. "You must be Beatrice," the woman said, coming around the counter with surprising speed. "I am Martha Morrison. Oh, my dear, you look exhausted. Was the journey very difficult?" "It was long," Beatrice admitted, "but I am grateful to be here." Martha showed her to a small room above the store that would serve as her living quarters, a modest space with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that overlooked the main street. It was clean and simple, and Beatrice felt something in her chest loosen slightly. This could work. This could be a new beginning. She spent the next week learning the rhythms of the store, mastering the account books, meeting the steady stream of customers who came through the door. Martha and her husband Thomas were patient teachers, and Beatrice found herself settling into the work with surprising ease. Numbers had always made sense to her in a way that people rarely did. Neat columns that balanced or did not. No room for the messy complications of human emotion. Nathan Zimmerman came into the store 4 days after her arrival, his arms full of tack that needed mending. Beatrice was alone at the counter, and she felt her pulse quicken as he approached. "Miss Sullivan," he said with that same easy smile, "I hope you are settling in well." "I am, thank you." Beatrice focused on recording his order in the ledger, keeping her scarred side turned away. "Mr. Morrison can have this ready by Thursday. That will be fine." Nathan leaned against the counter, making no move to leave. "Have you had a chance to see much of the area yet?" "I have been quite busy with the accounts." "That is important work," Nathan agreed, "but you should see the countryside while the weather is still fine. Fall comes early here, and the leaves turning color in the hills are something special." Beatrice looked up at him, searching for mockery or pity in his expression and finding neither. "I am sure it is lovely. I could show you if you would like," Nathan said. "Sunday afternoon I could bring a buggy into town. There is a creek about 3 miles east that is real pretty this time of year." The refusal was already forming on Beatrice's lips when something made her pause. Nathan was looking at her with straightforward interest, the kind of attention she had not received from a man since before the accident. It frightened her almost as much as it tempted her. "I do not think that would be appropriate," she said finally. "We barely know each other." "That is generally why people spend time together," Nathan said, his tone gentle and teasing, "to get to know each other better. But I understand if you would rather not. The offer stands if you change your mind." He tipped his head politely and left, and Beatrice watched him go with a confusion of feelings she could not quite name. Martha came downstairs a few minutes later and gave Beatrice a knowing look. "Nathan Zimmerman is a good man," she said without preamble. "One of the best in this county. His father died 2 years ago, left him and his younger brother to run the ranch alone. They have done well with it, by all accounts." "I am sure he is very respectable," Beatrice said, returning her attention to the ledger. "He is also single," Martha continued, "and he was looking at you like a man who has just seen something precious." Beatrice's hand tightened on her pen. "Mrs. Morrison, I am here to work, not to find a husband. I have no interest in courtship." Martha was quiet for a moment, then touched Beatrice's shoulder gently. "My dear, I do not know what happened to you before you came here, but I can see that you are carrying some heavy burdens. Sometimes the only way to set them down is to let someone help you carry them for a while." The words stayed with Beatrice through the rest of the week, circling in her mind like birds looking for a place to land. She told herself she had no business entertaining thoughts of Nathan Zimmerman or any other man. She was damaged goods, broken in ways that mattered. Her mother-in-law's words echoed constantly in her thoughts, a poisonous refrain she could not silence. But when Sunday came and Nathan appeared outside the store with a well-maintained buggy and a bouquet of wildflowers, Beatrice found herself saying yes before her better judgment could intervene. The ride out of town was initially quiet, both of them seeming uncertain how to begin. The buggy rolled smoothly along the dirt road, and Beatrice found herself relaxing slightly as they left the buildings behind. The Virginia countryside spread out around them in shades of gold and green, the late summer heat softened by a breeze that carried the scent of pine and earth. "Tell me about the ranch," Beatrice said finally, deciding that safe topics were the best approach. Nathan's face brightened, and he launched into a description of the Zimmerman land. 300 acres of good grazing land with a creek running through it, a herd of cattle that was slowly growing, horses that he trained and sold to buyers as far away as Richmond. He talked about his brother Samuel, who was 19 and still learning the business, about the house their grandfather had built with his own hands, about the challenges of keeping everything running with just the two of them and a handful of hired hands. "It sounds like hard work," Beatrice said. "It is," Nathan agreed, "but it is good work, honest work. When I go to bed at night, I can feel the ache in my muscles and know that I have accomplished something real." He glanced at her. "What about you? What brought you to Williamsburg?" Beatrice chose her words carefully. "My husband died 3 years ago. I needed a fresh start, and Mrs. Morrison was kind enough to offer me a position." "I am sorry for your loss." Nathan's voice was genuinely sympathetic. "That must have been very difficult. It was a long time ago." Beatrice looked down at her gloved hands. "I have learned to manage." They had reached the creek Nathan had mentioned, a clear ribbon of water that ran over smooth stones beneath overhanging trees. Nathan helped her down from the buggy, his hands respectful and steady, and they walked along the bank together. The sound of the water was soothing, and Beatrice felt some of the tension she always carried begin to ease. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said after a while. Beatrice braced herself. "Yes." "Why do you always turn your face away from people?" The question was so direct, so unexpected that Beatrice stumbled slightly. Nathan caught her elbow, steadying her, and she found herself looking at him fully for the first time, her scarred side completely visible in the afternoon light. "Because of this," she said, gesturing to her face. "Most people find it disturbing." Nathan studied her scar with the same careful attention he had given everything else, then shook his head. "I do not find it disturbing. I find it interesting. It tells me you have survived something difficult." He reached up slowly, telegraphing his intention, and brushed his fingertips feather light along the raised line of tissue. "Scars are just proof that we are stronger than whatever tried to break us." Beatrice felt her breath catch. No one had touched her scar before, not like this, not with such careful reverence. "There is more damage than what you can see," she heard herself say. "The accident that gave me this also hurt me inside. The doctors said I would likely never be able to carry a child to term without serious complications. They said I was broken." "Doctors can be wrong," Nathan said quietly. "But even if they are right, that does not make you broken. That just makes you someone who has faced hardship." His hand had moved from her scar to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing gently across her skin. "You are not broken, Beatrice. You are remarkable." She wanted to believe him. Standing there by the creek with the sun filtering through the leaves and this man looking at her like she was something valuable, she desperately wanted to believe that she could be more than the sum of her damage. But years of pain and shame were not so easily dismissed. "You barely know me," she whispered. "Then let me get to know you better," Nathan said. "Let me spend time with you. Let me show you that what other people said about you does not define who you are." Beatrice felt tears prickling behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Why?" Why would you want to invest that kind of time in someone like me? Nathan smiled, and it transformed his already handsome face into something that made her heart ache. Because when I look at you, I see strength and resilience and grace. Because you are beautiful, and I want to know everything about the woman who could walk through fire and come out the other side still standing. Because I think you are someone worth knowing, Beatrice Sullivan. She let him kiss her then, a soft brush of lips that felt like a promise and a question all at once. When they pulled apart, Beatrice was shaking, but it was not from fear. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Beatrice had experienced before. Nathan was patient and persistent, showing up at the store with small gifts, inviting her on rides through the countryside, introducing her to his brother Samuel and the ranch hands who worked his land. He treated her with a respect and affection that felt almost foreign, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, but making his intentions clear. Samuel took to Beatrice immediately, a gangly young man with his brother's kind eyes and an enthusiasm for everything that was almost infectious. He told her stories about growing up on the ranch, about the time Nathan had broken his arm trying to ride an unbroken stallion and kept working anyway because the cattle needed tending, about the way their father had taught them to respect the land and the animals in their care. Nathan has been alone too long, Samuel confided one afternoon when his brother was out checking fence lines. He has had his share of women interested in him, but he always said none of them felt right. Then you came along, and I have never seen him like this. He is happier than he has been since Pa died. Beatrice did not know what to say to that. She was still struggling to believe that this was real, that Nathan's attention was genuine and not some elaborate form of pity. The voices from her past kept whispering their poison, reminding her of all the reasons she should not allow herself to hope. It was late September when everything came to a head. Beatrice had been in Williamsburg for 6 weeks, and her relationship with Nathan had progressed to the point where people in town had started talking about when they thought a wedding might be announced. Martha Morrison smiled knowingly whenever Nathan came into the store, and Thomas had started referring to him as that young man of yours. Beatrice was walking back from the post office when she overheard 2 women talking outside the dress shop. She did not mean to eavesdrop, but her own name caught her attention. I cannot imagine what Nathan Zimmerman sees in her, one woman was saying. That terrible scar, and I heard she was married before, a widow with no family and no prospects. Martha Morrison told my sister that the poor thing cannot have children, the other woman replied in a stage whisper. Some kind of internal damage from an accident. Can you imagine? What kind of wife would she make for a rancher? Nathan needs sons to help with the land. He is a kind man. Perhaps he feels sorry for her. Beatrice walked away before she could hear more, but the damage was done. All her old fears came rushing back with renewed force. Of course people were talking. Of course they saw her as inadequate. And of course Nathan deserved better than someone who could not give him children, who could not fulfill the most basic expectation of a rancher's wife. She avoided him for 3 days, making excuses when he came to the store, claiming illness when he invited her riding. Finally, Nathan showed up at the store after closing time and refused to leave until she talked to him. "What is wrong?" he asked, his face creased with concern. "Beatrice, please, tell me what I did wrong." "You did nothing wrong," Beatrice said, her voice tight. "That is the problem. You have been nothing but kind and patient, and I have been foolish enough to let myself believe that this could work." "Why could it not work?" Nathan stepped closer, but Beatrice backed away. "Because I cannot give you what you need." The words burst out of her like a dam breaking. "You are a rancher. You need sons to help you work the land to carry on what you and your family have built. I cannot give you that. I am broken inside, Nathan. The doctors were very clear. Any pregnancy would be dangerous for me, and even if I survived, there is no guarantee I could carry a child to term. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Is that what you think I want from you, children? It is what any man would want. What any rancher needs. What I need," Nathan said, his voice low and intense, "is you, Beatrice. Not some imaginary children that may or may not exist. You." "But everyone is talking," Beatrice protested. "They are saying you deserve better, that I would be a terrible wife because I cannot have children. I do not give a damn what everyone is saying." Nathan closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. "Do you want to know what I think? I think that if we are blessed with children someday, whether they come from your body or we find them some other way, they will be lucky to have you as a mother. I think you would be an amazing mother because you understand what it means to hurt, what it means to persevere. You would teach them strength and compassion and resilience." "How can you say that?" Beatrice whispered. "You cannot know that." "I know you," Nathan said firmly. "I have watched you with Samuel, the way you listen to him and encourage him. I have seen you with the children who come into the store, how patient and kind you are. I have seen your heart, Beatrice, and it is beautiful." He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "My mother died when I was 12. Samuel was 9. I know what it is like to grow up without a mother, and I know what matters. It is not perfection, it is love. It is showing up every day and doing your best. It is caring enough to try." Tears were streaming down Beatrice's face now, and she could not stop them. "I am so scared," she admitted. "I am scared that I will disappoint you, that I will not be enough." "You are already enough," Nathan said, pulling her into his arms. "You are more than enough, and I am going to spend every day proving that to you until you believe it." They stood there in the dim store, holding each other as the last light faded from the windows. Beatrice let herself lean into Nathan's strength, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have this. She could have love and a future and a chance at happiness. "Marry me," Nathan said against her hair. "Marry me and come live at the ranch. We will figure everything else out together." "Yes," Beatrice whispered. "Yes." The wedding took place in early October, a simple ceremony in the small church with Martha and Thomas Morrison standing as witnesses. Beatrice wore a dress Martha had helped her sew, pale blue with lace at the collar and cuffs. Nathan wore his best suit, and when he looked at her walking down the aisle, his face held such open joy that Beatrice felt her last doubts crumble away. They moved her few belongings to the ranch the next day, and Beatrice got her first real look at the place that would be her home. The house was large and solidly built, with wide porches and windows that let in plenty of light. Inside, it showed clear signs of being a bachelor household, practical and somewhat sparse, but clean and well-maintained. Samuel had made an effort to put wildflowers in jars around the main room, a sweet gesture that made Beatrice smile. "It needs a woman's touch," Nathan admitted, showing her through the rooms. "I know it is not fancy, but it is sturdy and warm in winter." "It is perfect," Beatrice said, and meant it. The house felt solid, permanent, like something that could withstand storms. She could make a home here. The first months of marriage were an adjustment. Beatrice had to learn the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings and long days, the constant demands of animals and land. She took over the household management, working with Samuel to plan meals and manage supplies. She learned to cook for hungry ranch hands, to preserve food for the winter, to handle the 100 small tasks that kept a household running. Nathan was patient with her learning curve, never critical when she burned biscuits or miscalculated how much feed to order. He taught her to ride properly, spending hours with her in the corral as she learned to handle a horse with confidence. He showed her the property boundaries, introduced her to neighbors, included her in decisions about the ranch. More importantly, he showed her every day that he loved her. He left her notes tucked into unexpected places, brought her flowers from the meadow, held her at night, and told her about his dreams for their future. He listened when she talked about her fears, her past, the things that still haunted her. He was patient when she woke from nightmares about the accident, holding her until the shaking stopped. By Christmas, Beatrice felt like she had lived on the ranch forever. She hosted a holiday dinner for Samuel and the ranch hands, preparing a feast that left everyone groaning and happy. She had decorated the house with pine boughs and candles, creating a warmth that made Nathan pull her aside and kiss her thoroughly, telling her she had made the house into a real home. "I have never been happier," he told her that night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest and his arms around her. "I did not know I could feel like this." "Neither did I," Beatrice admitted. She traced circles on his chest, working up her courage. "Nathan, I want to try. For a baby, I mean." "I know it is risky, but I want to try." Nathan was quiet for a moment, his hand stilling in her hair. "Are you sure? I meant what I said. I do not need children to be happy. I have you, and that is enough." "I know," Beatrice said, "but I want to try for us. I want to give us that chance." "Only if you promise me something," Nathan said seriously. "Promise me that if it becomes too dangerous, if the doctors say it is a risk to your health, you will stop. I cannot lose you, Beatrice. I need you to understand that. No child is worth losing you." "I promise," Beatrice said, and sealed it with a kiss. Spring came to the ranch in a riot of new growth and new life. The cattle dropped their calves, and Beatrice helped Samuel bottle feed a motherless calf that had been rejected by the herd. She named him Thunder for the way he bellowed when he was hungry, and the little bull calf followed her around the barnyard like a puppy. By June, Beatrice began to suspect that she might be pregnant. She said nothing to Nathan at first, too afraid to hope, but when she missed her monthly courses for the second time, she made a trip into town to see the doctor. Dr. Harrison was an older man with kind eyes and gentle hands. He examined her carefully, asked detailed questions about her symptoms and her medical history. When he finished, he sat back and studied her thoughtfully. "You are pregnant," he confirmed. "About 3 months along, I would estimate." Beatrice felt her heart leap and plummet simultaneously. "Is it dangerous, given my history?" "It could be," Dr. Harrison said honestly. "Your previous injuries may complicate things. You will need to be very careful, take things easy, avoid heavy lifting or strenuous activity. I will want to see you regularly to monitor your progress." He paused. "But I have seen women with more serious complications carry healthy babies to term. It is not impossible, Mrs. Zimmerman. It will just require caution and care." Beatrice rode back to the ranch in a daze, her hands trembling on the reins. She found Nathan in the barn, checking on a mare that was due to foal soon. He took one look at her face and immediately came to her side. "What is wrong? What happened?" "I am pregnant," Beatrice said, the words feeling surreal. "The doctor confirmed it. 3 months." Nathan's face went through a series of expressions too quick to catalog, ending on fierce joy mixed with concern. "Are you all right? What did he say about the risks?" "He said I need to be careful, but that it is not impossible." Beatrice gripped his hands. "Nathan, we are going to have a baby." He pulled her into his arms carefully, as if she had suddenly become fragile porcelain. "A baby," he repeated wonderingly. "Our baby." The next 6 months were simultaneously the longest and shortest of Beatrice's life. Dr. Harrison monitored her closely, and Nathan fussed over her like a mother hen, insisting she rest frequently and refusing to let her do any heavy work. Samuel was almost as bad, constantly asking if she needed anything and threatening to fight anyone who so much as looked at her wrong. There were complications. Beatrice had several episodes of heavy bleeding that sent Nathan racing into town for the doctor, his face pale with fear. Each time, Dr. Harrison managed to stabilize her, but he warned them that the final weeks would be the most dangerous. "If you make it past 8 months, your chances improve dramatically," he told them. "But you need to stay in bed as much as possible, Mrs. Zimmerman. No exceptions." Beatrice chafed at the restrictions, hating the enforced idleness, but she obeyed. The alternative was too terrible to contemplate. She spent her days reading, sewing tiny clothes and watching the winter landscape through the bedroom window. Nathan moved his work closer to the house, conducting business in the kitchen so he could check on her frequently. The baby was active, kicking and rolling constantly, and Beatrice would press Nathan's hand to her swollen belly so he could feel it too. Those moments of connection, feeling their child move beneath their joined hands, made all the difficulty worthwhile. She passed the 8-month mark in late January of 1880, and Dr. Harrison's face showed cautious optimism. "You have done well," he told her. "Very well, all things considered. Now we just need to get through the birth itself." The labor started on a snowy February morning, a month before anyone had expected. Beatrice woke to cramping pains and the wetness of her water breaking, and Nathan immediately sent Samuel racing for the doctor while he tried to keep his terror from showing. "You are going to be fine," he told Beatrice, his voice steady even though his hands were shaking. "You are the strongest person I know. You can do this." The labor was long and difficult, 18 hours of increasing pain and exhaustion. Dr. Harrison stayed throughout, monitoring her closely, his face growing more concerned as the hours dragged on. Beatrice could see Nathan pacing outside the bedroom door every time someone opened it, could hear Samuel's worried questions from downstairs. Finally, as the winter sun was setting on the second day, Dr. Harrison told her to push. Beatrice bore down with what felt like the last of her strength, and the baby emerged in a rush of fluid and blood and tremendous relief. "It is a boy," Dr. Harrison announced, and Beatrice heard the tiny, angry cry that meant her son was alive and breathing. They cleaned him quickly and placed him in her arms, and Beatrice looked down at the small, red-faced creature who had nearly cost her everything. He was perfect. Tiny and wrinkled and absolutely perfect. Nathan was let in a few minutes later, and he stopped in the doorway when he saw them, his face working through emotions he could not name. He came slowly to the bed and sat carefully on the edge, staring at his son with wonder. "He is here," Beatrice said unnecessarily. "Nathan, he is really here." "You did it," Nathan whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. The baby immediately gripped it, and Nathan let out a shaky laugh. "You are amazing. You are absolutely amazing. What should we name him?" Beatrice asked. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy, but now that the baby was here, none of their previous ideas seemed quite right. Nathan studied his son's face thoughtfully. "What about James?" he suggested. "It was my father's name, James Zimmerman." "James," Beatrice repeated, testing it. The baby blinked up at her with unfocused blue eyes, and she smiled. "Hello, James. Welcome to the world." Dr. Harrison examined Beatrice thoroughly before he left, checking for tears and excessive bleeding. "You did remarkably well," he told her. "Much better than I feared, honestly. You will need to rest for several weeks, let your body heal, but I think you are going to be fine." "Can I have more children?" Beatrice asked. "Safely, I mean," Dr. Harrison hesitated. "I would not recommend it," he said carefully. "Your body has been through a tremendous ordeal, and another pregnancy could be even more dangerous." But that is a decision for you and your husband to make together." After he left, Beatrice held James and tried to sort through the tangle of her emotions. Relief that they had both survived, joy at finally holding her son, fear about the future, gratitude for Nathan's steady presence beside her. "What are you thinking?" Nathan asked, stroking her hair back from her sweaty forehead. "I am thinking that Dr. Harrison said I should not have more children," Beatrice said. "And I am thinking about how much I wanted to prove everyone wrong, to show that I could be a good mother despite everything they said. But mostly I am thinking that I already feel like I love this little person more than I knew it was possible to love anyone." "You are going to be a wonderful mother," Nathan said firmly. "Our children are lucky to have you." Beatrice looked up at him sharply. "Children?" "Nathan, you heard what the doctor said." "I did," Nathan agreed. "But there are other ways to have children if we decide we want more. There are orphans who need homes, children who need parents. If we decide to expand our family someday, we will find a way." He kissed her forehead gently. "But right now, I am just grateful that you are both here and healthy. Everything else can wait." The weeks that followed were a blur of exhaustion and wonder. James was a demanding baby, crying frequently and sleeping in short bursts. Beatrice was overwhelmed by the responsibility of keeping this tiny person alive, terrified that she would somehow fail at the most basic tasks of motherhood. But Nathan was right there beside her, learning to change diapers and walking the floors at night when James would not settle, heating bottles when Beatrice found that breastfeeding was too painful with her healing body. Samuel turned out to be surprisingly good with the baby, able to make James stop crying with a combination of silly faces and gentle bouncing. Slowly, Beatrice gained confidence. She learned to read James's different cries, to anticipate his needs, to trust her instincts. The voices from her past that had told her she would never be a good mother grew quieter with each passing day, drowned out by the evidence that she was, in fact, doing just fine. By the time James was 3 months old, Beatrice felt like she had finally found her rhythm. She could manage the household and care for the baby, could even help with some of the lighter ranch work when Nathan needed an extra pair of hands. James was growing plump and healthy, his early fussiness giving way to a sunny disposition that had the ranch hands all competing to make him smile. Spring came again, and with it came a wagon full of children. The wagon appeared in their yard on a warm April morning, driven by a stern-looking woman in dark clothing. She introduced herself as Mrs. Fletcher from the Virginia Children's Aid Society and explained that she was traveling west with a group of orphans, placing them with families along the way. "I heard in town that you folks might be willing to take in a child," Mrs. Fletcher said. "We have several who still need homes, good children who just need a chance." Beatrice looked at Nathan in confusion. "Did you contact her?" "I made some inquiries," Nathan admitted. "I know we talked about waiting, but when I heard about the orphan train coming through, I thought it was worth at least meeting them. If you do not want to, we can send them on their way." Beatrice looked at the wagon, where she could see small faces peering out from the canvas cover. Something in her chest tightened. "Can we meet them?" Mrs. Fletcher had them line up in the yard, 8 children ranging in age from about 4 to 13. They were clean but thin, wearing donated clothes that did not quite fit, their faces holding the careful blankness of children who had learned not to hope for too much. Beatrice walked along the line with James on her hip, looking at each child. A little girl of about 5 caught her attention, standing very straight with her hands clasped in front of her. She had dark curly hair and solemn brown eyes, and when Beatrice stopped in front of her, the girl looked up and said, "My name is Lily. I am 5 years old. I can read some words and I am good at sewing. I would be very grateful for a home, madam. The formal little speech broke Beatrice's heart. She crouched down to Lily's level. What happened to your parents, sweetheart? Mama died of fever last year, Lily said. Papa could not take care of all of us by himself, so he sent us on the train to find new families. He said it was for the best. How many siblings do you have? Beatrice asked. Lily pointed to a boy of about 8 standing a few places down the line. That is my brother Timothy. We are supposed to stay together if we can. That is what Papa said. Beatrice looked at Timothy, who was watching his sister with protective intensity. He was all sharp angles and wary eyes, the look of a child who had learned to be tough out of necessity. She straightened and walked back to Nathan, who was talking quietly with Mrs. Fletcher. Can we take 2? She asked without preamble. The little girl Lily and her brother Timothy. They need to stay together. Nathan looked surprised but pleased. Are you sure? That would be 3 children under one roof, and James is still so young. I am sure, Beatrice said. She looked at Lily and Timothy, both trying so hard to be brave, and felt something settle into place in her heart. They need us, Nathan, and I think we need them too. Mrs. Fletcher had papers for them to sign, official documents that would make Lily and Timothy legally part of the Zimmerman family. The children gathered their few belongings, saying goodbye to the other orphans with the stoic acceptance of those who had already lost too much. Lily held Beatrice's hand as they walked into the house, her grip tight enough to hurt. Timothy followed more warily, his eyes taking in everything as if cataloging escape routes. Samuel greeted them with enthusiastic warmth, immediately offering to show Timothy the horses and the new calf. That first night was chaos. Lily was quiet but clearly terrified, flinching at loud noises and refusing to leave Beatrice's side. Timothy was defensive and bristling, rejecting help and insisting he could take care of himself and his sister. James, perhaps sensing the tension, cried more than usual. Beatrice found herself stretched thinner than she had ever been, trying to comfort Lily while managing James and coaxing Timothy to eat dinner. By the time she got everyone settled into bed, with Lily in the small bedroom next to theirs and Timothy in Samuel's room, she was exhausted beyond measure. She collapsed into bed next to Nathan and said, "What did we just do?" Nathan pulled her close and laughed softly. "I think we just became parents to 3 children instead of 1. I have no idea how to do this," Beatrice admitted. "James is already a full-time job. How am I supposed to take care of 2 traumatized children on top of that?" "The same way you do everything else," Nathan said. "One day at a time, with love and patience and stubbornness." He kissed her temple. "You are not alone in this, Beatrice. We will figure it out together." The next weeks were a process of adjustment for everyone. Lily slowly began to relax, her careful formality giving way to a sweet, affectionate nature. She followed Beatrice everywhere, helping with James and learning household tasks with intense concentration. At night, she would have nightmares and come crying to their room, and Beatrice would hold her and stroke her hair until she fell back asleep. Timothy was harder. He was angry at the world, at his father for sending him away, at fate for taking his mother. He picked fights with Samuel, tested boundaries constantly, and refused to show vulnerability. But Beatrice saw the way he watched Lily, making sure she had enough to eat, checking on her when he thought no one was looking. She saw the core of protectiveness beneath the prickly exterior. Nathan had more success with Timothy than she did. He put the boy to work on ranch chores, treating him like a capable hand rather than a child who needed coddling. Timothy responded to the responsibility, taking pride in doing things right. Slowly, grudgingly, he began to soften. By summer, something resembling a family had formed. Lily called Beatrice Mama now and insisted on helping care for James, who she referred to as my baby brother. Timothy still had not called them anything other than Madam and Sir. But he smiled more often, and the angry edge to his voice had dulled. They celebrated the 4th of July with a picnic by the creek, the whole family together. Beatrice watched Nathan show Timothy how to skip stones while Samuel held James and Lily wove wildflower crowns, and felt a contentment so profound it was almost painful. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked later, when the children were occupied with catching fireflies in the gathering dusk. "I am thinking about how I was told I would never be a good mother," Beatrice said. "I am thinking about how scared I was that they were right, that I was too broken to care for anyone." She looked at their children, their chosen and biological family, "and I am thinking about how wrong they were." Nathan pulled her into his arms. "Our children are lucky to have you," he said firmly. "All of them. You give them exactly what they need: love, stability, and someone who understands that healing takes time." Beatrice leaned into his embrace and let herself believe it. She was not broken. She was not inadequate. She was a mother, a wife, a woman who had survived and found a way to thrive. The scars were still there, internal and external, but they no longer defined her. The years that followed brought their own challenges and joys. Timothy eventually started calling them Ma and Pa, a milestone that made Beatrice cry happy tears. Lily grew into a bright, confident girl who loved school and dreamed of becoming a teacher. James was a cheerful toddler who adored his older siblings and followed them everywhere on chubby, unsteady legs. In the fall of 1882, when James was 2.5, they took in another orphan, a 6-year-old boy named Marcus whose parents had died in a fire. Marcus was shy and stuttering, but Lily immediately took him under her wing and Timothy taught him to ride. Their family continued to grow and shift and adapt. The ranch prospered under Nathan's careful management. They added more land, improved the herd, built a larger barn. Samuel eventually married a girl from town and built a house on the eastern section of the property. The Zimmerman name became synonymous with quality cattle and honest dealing throughout Virginia. But more than the material success, what Beatrice treasured was the family they had built together. Their home was always full of noise and laughter, scraped knees and childhood arguments, holiday dinners that required extra tables and celebrations that included extended family and ranch hands who had become like family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan gave Beatrice a portrait that a traveling artist had painted of their family. It showed all 5 of them, Nathan and Beatrice seated with James between them, Timothy and Lily standing behind, and Marcus on Nathan's knee. Beatrice looked at it and saw not just what they were, but what they had overcome to get there. "You have any regrets?" Nathan asked as they stood together looking at the portrait. Beatrice thought about the question seriously. There were things she wished had been different, pain she wished she could have avoided. But the path that had led her here to this man and these children and this life was not one she would change. "No," she said finally. "No regrets, only gratitude." Timothy grew into a strong, capable young man who took over more and more of the ranch operations as Nathan got older. He married at 21 and brought his wife Sarah to live on the ranch, in a house they built together on the southern pasture. Lily did become a teacher, opening a school in Williamsburg and boarding with the Morrisons during the week before coming home on weekends. Marcus studied veterinary medicine through correspondence courses and became the go-to expert for animal health throughout the county. James, their biological son, ironically showed the least interest in ranching, instead developing a talent for numbers and business that reminded everyone of his mother. He eventually managed the financial side of the ranch operations and several neighboring spreads as well. Each of her children gave Beatrice grandchildren in time, filling the ranch with another generation of laughter and chaos. She and Nathan would sit on the porch in the evenings, watching their grandchildren play in the yard where their own children had played, and marvel at the life they had built together. "You remember what you told me that day by the creek?" Beatrice asked on one such evening when they were both in their 60s and the sun was setting gold over the pastures. "When I said I could never be a good mother," Nathan smiled, his face lined now but his eyes still that startling blue. "I told you our children would be lucky to have you." "You were right," Beatrice said simply. She took his hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of decades of practice. "About everything. You were right." Nathan raised her hand to his lips and kissed it. "We were right, together. We chose to believe in each other when the world said we should not. And look what we built." Beatrice looked out at the land that had become home, at the houses that held their children and grandchildren, at the life that had grown from that first terrified decision to hope for something better. She thought about the girl who had stepped off the train in Williamsburg so many years ago, certain she was too broken to deserve happiness. She thought about all the voices that had told her she would fail, that she was inadequate, that her scars made her less than whole. And she thought about the cowboy who had looked past the scars to see her heart, who had loved her fiercely and completely, who had given her not just children but the confidence to be the mother she had always wanted to be. "I love you," she told Nathan, the words carrying the weight of 30-some years of shared life. "Thank you for never giving up on me." "I love you too," Nathan said, "and I never could have given up on you. You were always worth fighting for, Beatrice. Always." They sat together as the sun finished setting, turning the sky brilliant shades of orange and pink. Around them, the ranch settled into evening quiet, the sounds of animals bedding down and children being called in for supper. It was an ordinary moment, unremarkable in its simplicity, but to Beatrice it felt like everything she had ever dreamed of and more. She had been told she would never be a good mother. She had been told she was broken, inadequate, less than what was needed. But sitting there on the porch with Nathan's hand in hers, and the evidence of their beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect family all around them, Beatrice knew the truth. She had not just been a good mother. She had been exactly the mother her children needed. And that was worth every scar, every struggle, every moment of doubt that had led her to this place. The ranch would continue long after they were gone, their children and grandchildren carrying on what they had started. But more than land or cattle or material legacy, what Nathan and Beatrice had built was a family founded on love and second chances, on the belief that broken things could be made whole, that scars were proof of survival rather than symbols of inadequacy. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Beatrice leaned her head on Nathan's shoulder and closed her eyes, content in the knowledge that she had found exactly where she belonged. The voices from her past had been silenced by years of proof to the contrary, replaced by the certain knowledge that she was loved, valued, and more than enough exactly as she was. Their story was not one of perfection, but of persistence, not of avoiding pain, but of finding joy despite it. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy of all, proof that even the most broken among us could build something beautiful, if only someone believed in us enough to help us see it.